My name is Brian Mead. I am the National Public Safety Director with Dewberry Architects. So I oversee a lot of our public safety projects around the country. In our Elgin office, I'm also the design director for most of our projects. So I help oversee the initial vision of what that project and that community is going to look like.
My name is Jonathan Tallman. I am the Regional Public Safety Director of Dewberry Architects out of our Elgin office. And for your project, I am the project manager and project guide, really, for the job.
So Dewberry Architects got involved with the village of Glen Ellen back in the fall of 2011. At that time, the village had put out an RFP for a facility needs study for the combined civic center. So that was not only police, but it was the village hall functions and the shared components. So we started, almost 6 years ago now. From there, we did about a 4 to 6 month study, and it was truly ground up. So we really wanted to look at a needs-based study and not like based on a certain budget going backwards. So that need-based study took us to a first program that was about 45,000 square feet. So that was arrived at after a series of interviews, really going around documenting your existing spaces. And so that 45,000 square foot program for police also accompanied some site test fits. So the first study, we looked at a bunch of renovation options, as you recall, because some of the first ideas were to really try to keep the police functions down on Duane Street if possible. So we looked at additions, we looked at renovations, we looked at structured parking in the back, we looked at a lot of different ideas, and it was really tricky to try to get everything that the police needed in that crammed in space. So at the end of that study, we started to look at alternative sites around Glen Ellen. We looked at a Spring Avenue site towards kind of the east end of town by 355. We looked at a site on Park Boulevard to the south by Glenbart South. And we also looked at this site here at Panfish Park as one of the last ideas. So that study ended really without maybe a definitive answer, but it did look at a bunch of those, and I think we started seeing advantages for here at Panfish Park rising to the top. So that was 2012. Fast forward a couple of years, another study came on board in 2014, and with that refresh, we knew we needed to maybe reevaluate some of the programming items. For example, the firing range was a sort of a support building. It had the range component, it had some vehicle bays, vehicle processing, some ammunition storage, and all of that, was back on the table. How do we get this project maybe in a frame of mind or a budget that will actually pass and get built? So the 45,000 square feet came down to about 37,000, if I recall, and we were looking at possibly not doing the firing range at that time. And a lot of momentum was really building towards the Panfish Park site here. That was 2014, right at the beginning. And then in 2015, in the summer, the village then had decided to go forward with the project, still hovering in maybe the mid-30s, depending on if it could be afforded, but they were going to go design, build, delivery method. So in the summer of 2015, we had grouped with our design build partner, Leopardo Construction, and that became the long story short, the winning team for the village to do the project.
When we first start into the design of the project, we first start with the programming, and in this case we started with the needs facility study, knowing that we were at roughly around 35,000 square feet when we started the project. The village had allocated a certain amount of money for the project, and knowing that value, we started analyzing the program with the police department and the village to figure out areas that the police could add on to the building in the future. One being the firing range, and some additional space for evidence storage. As we continue in our process of designing, we get into schematic design and looking at, how does the building sit on the site, where does it sit on the site, the orientation of the building on the site, and through that exploration, we end up what we have with today. It's amazing. from the very beginning, where we start and where we end, it's very close to what we had in the initial plan, right?
That's right, John. And I'll just add to that. When we started looking at this site, we actually had an L-shaped building that was a little closer to the ponds of Panfish Park, because we thought, the amenities of that site, let's get views of the water, let's for safety reasons pull it back from park. Well, as soon as the project became real and was a go, we had soil, testing and soil borings, and that showed a lot of bad soil conditions where very, very quickly, with the help of Leopardo Construction, the soils reports, John and our whole team, we had to push the whole building within about 100 feet of Park Boulevard. I mean, that became a super important cost issue to get this project to happen. So the L-shaped building way back by the pond all of a sudden became a more linear building very close to Park within the setbacks. And so that shows also the importance of unique site analyses and how that drives a final solution.
We work with our civil engineers to determine where the floodplain is today and where it will be in the future. And lots of communication with the Army Corps of Engineers and the Village of Glen Ellen to figure out where that future floodplain is going to be. Now, to site the building correctly and so that the police department can use the building appropriately, we had to make sure that we set the building elevation a couple feet above the floodplain, and then we also cited and made sure that we designed the parking lots in such a way that you weren't going to lose your parking area, so it would become an unusable site. So we had to make sure that we elevated the entire site in order to make sure the police could get their vehicles in and out of the site in emergency situations.